Campbell, and I am so blessed to be in this space with the doctor because we got to put respect on people's names, okay? Because when they go and get those degrees, you got to put the DR where it
Mhm,
belongs with a period.
mhm,
We are
mhm.
here with Dr. Jen M. Jackson. How you doing?
I am so excited about this. This is so long overdue. This is so exciting for me. I'm fangirling myself a little bit, just a little bit of
Oh
fangirling.
my gosh, well, I'm fangirling you because not a lot of people know that not a lot of black women have, PhDs, in particular in political science, in an area that we're in right now in this country. And
Hmm.
so I am just so blessed that you wrote this book and you've highlighted a lot of my sheroes. So what we always like to say on the pod is actually, how are you doing?
Mm. I appreciate this question. I went to a book talk by my dear friend, and I'm gonna plug her book as well. Tara Pringle Jefferson. She wrote "Bloom How You Must," and I went yesterday, and it was really a very healing and generative space because there was all these Black women in there, and we're talking about how we actually are, and collectively we are not okay, right? I think that it's hard to be okay when so many of us are not okay. So I'm actually really good, probably the best I've been in a very long time. And even with that, I am still struggling, right? Because the world is on fire. There are so many folks who, look like me, love like me, who are struggling to just exist every day. So my being okay is contingent, it's conditional upon the fact that, collectively we are in a difficult place.
So I'm going to be nosy. How do you feel you're well in this time?
Yeah. I mean, conversations like this have been so wonderful for me. I just moved to the DMV, and I moved away from the Northeast. I moved away from upstate New York. And that has given me access to so many incredible people and like the ability to just hop in my car. I just came from a lunch with my friend Deisha Dyer, who wrote the book Undiplomatic, right? Like, I can just do that now. I can just be like, hey, Deisha, let's go get something to eat. We'll just sit over croissants and matchas and talk shit. So I will say, like, that's how I'm feeling my well right now is connecting with my author friends, connecting with my queer friends, my academic friends, folks who for a very long time I have been geographically displaced from and not able to just be in community with and see them and hug them and tell them I love them. That has been life changing for me these past 7 months since moving here.
No, I really, really, really love that. And I totally understand because I also feel like I've been the best I've been in a very long time. I'm in the midst of planning my wedding, and it's so exciting and amazing. But I'm like, oh yeah, the world's on freaking fire, and how dare I be happy in this time? But as I always remember that we are such a resilient people that we always find happiness with even in the darkest of times.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to find joy because that's the purpose. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're such joyous people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna find joy because we need some. Because
Absolutely.
y'all see this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been telling, especially Black women, I'm like, so many systems and institutions are set up to steal our joy, to extract our labor, to tell us that we can't rest. I'm like, anytime I see a happy Black woman, I'm like, yes, like, have some joy. Like, it makes me so happy. Like, and also congratulations. Planning a wedding ain't no joke.
Great. I have amazing wedding planners that I knew I was going to hire because I'm not about to be stressed out with all these
Yeah.
RFPs and
No.
planning and doing all these things. It's really just me saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
My
As it should
hardest
be.
decision was getting my dress.
Yeah, that's the hard to me. That's the hardest decision. Like I'll get the dress. Y'all show up. I don't care if three of y'all come. I've
That's
been
how
married
I'm
for
feeling
20 years.
right now.
I'm coming up on my 20-year anniversary in May, and that wedding was hard. That was people have feelings. People don't want to sit next to so and so,
Hmm.
and I had to do a lot of checking. Like, hey, listen, not your day, not your
Not
day.
your day, not your monkey, not your circus. This
That's
is
it.
my circus. Okay,
That-
I'm the ringleader. Call me Britney
That's
Spears.
come on. That's right.
So, as as you guys see, we are yippity yapping today, but I want y'all to know about who I am interviewing. Our guest today is the Dr. Jen M. Jackson, PhD, award winning professor of political science at Syracuse University, columnist for Teen Vogue, Speak On It column, and a queer, gender fluid, androgynous black woman whose work sits at the intersection of black feminism, racial trauma, gender, sexuality, and social movements. They've written for the Washington Post, Al Jazeera, Essence, The Root, and more. Black Women Taught Us, which is what we're going to talk about today, an
Hmm.
intimate history of black feminism is their debut book, a collection of 11 love letters to black women who built our liberation movements and taught us how to fight, how to name the fight, and how to imagine a freer world.
Hmm.
It was a finalist for the Penn Open Book Award. So, Dr. Jackson, again, welcome to the
Thank
pod.
you. Thank you. And I don't know if you know this, but you are my last podcast on the Black Women Taught Us book tour. This is it. This is the last one.
Oh my gosh. I feel so honored.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing the
Of
space with
course.
me because as an indie book podcast who's been in these trenches, I am
Hmm.
so appreciative and especially to talk about this right now.
Hmm.
And so you said Black Woman Taught Us is your offering, my love letter to them and to us. Before we get in the book, what were the black women in your life, your everyday life, that this letter is also for? Because
Hmm.
the book opens up with gospel singers in your home, and I think that's just so amazing. And there's something about gospel music that just it hits something, it scratches something in the back. So
Hmm.
yes, let's talk about them.
Yeah, I love this question. At each of the book stops in the first leg before the paperback, I made sure that there was a practitioner in the room who did somatics or body work or mediation, meditation, those kind of things, so that we could call the ancestors into the space for every single one of those talks. And that was intentional because I wrote this book to make clear that when we talk about black feminism and what we think that is, that it must include a deep love for the black women who are already in our lives. Unfortunately, there is this habit, right, of pedestalizing, valorizing, and romanticizing our black feminist elders and ancestors, people
Yes.
who we don't know, right? But then the ones who are in proximity to us, we treat them as if they're disposable. We take them for granted, right? And so I wrote this book to suggest, right? I start with my mother and my aunts, my grandmother. I start with those women because those are the women who taught me my first lessons on Black feminism, right? When I talk in that first chapter about my auntie Donna Faye, who I just recently got to go home and see and tell her, Auntie Donna, you're in this book, and give her a copy of the book, like she sang my favorite songs in church. She was a taller black woman who told me how to move in my body. I'm 6'4". I was over 6 feet tall at 10 years old. And she was like, you're gonna need some assistance. She was like, your mom, everybody in your family is 5'5" and under. No one's gonna be able to tell you about how to navigate this body in the world. And so she just took me under her wing. And this book is for Auntie Donna Faye. This book is for my Auntie Barbara, who told me how to make sure my chicken was cooked all the way through. My grandmother, who when I was sick, she would make me top ramen with hot dogs in it. You know what I'm saying? Like this,
Wow.
this is about the women who raised me just as much as it's about the Audre Lordes and the Angela Davises, because my black feminisms started there. My black feminisms started with people who hadn't read these scholarly texts and didn't have access to college campuses. I didn't come from a place where people had college degrees. It just wasn't a common thing. So the language of black feminism was taught to me in, this is how your food should look. This is how you should move through the world. This is what's expected of you, but you don't have to do it, right? Like, here are the boxes, and you can step outside of them. Those were my black feminist lessons, and that's who I wrote this book for. Your sound just went out. Uh-oh. I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. All right. Well, I try to be cute with it. I'll get it together one day. And I got to talk to my producer about that. So, Dante, when you hear that, cut that. So, so this was also birthed out of a court at Syracuse.
Hmm.
And as someone who also a
Mm.
things that, courses can't hold. And I felt like that's what you were trying to get out of this book. So, what is something that you knew by making this book that courses couldn't hold?
I love that question. When you sent me this question, I thought to myself, I said, I was like, oh, did my course, was there something my course couldn't hold? And I had never thought of it until I saw your question. And it absolutely is true that, I teach in a conservative, predominantly white institution. I am teaching Black feminist politics in a department that has never had a Black feminist politics course. I'm the first person to teach it on that campus. And I got a lot of pushback about that, questions about that. And then it ended up being one of the most popular courses on the campus. And even within that, I found myself pulling away from telling the absolute truth, right, about what these lessons taught us. So, in particular, Toni Morrison, right? People like to sterilize Toni Morrison's legacies as if she was just writing these frou-frou little books about Black people in the Midwest. And it's like, no, have y'all opened Beloved? Have y'all read Jazz? Right. Have you read Song of Solomon? And I think I was not able to really investigate Toni Morrison's work as much in the classroom because, frankly, people were not ready for it. And they could not understand how it was inherently political. To write a book that is fictional about Margaret Garner, which is who Setha in Beloved is based on, someone who was escaping slavery and ended up, trigger warning, harming and unaliving her children in the process. That is a hell of a motivational topic, to inspire a text. And a lot of times when I'm introducing these works and these writers and these scholars and thinkers to college freshmen, they're not ready, if I'm being honest with you. And I understand because I wasn't either. As a freshman in college, I wasn't either. And so there's a lot of things in the book, including Fannie Lou Hamer's experience with a Mississippi appendectomy, a non-consensual hysterectomy. Those are things that I don't even teach in my class fully because unfortunately for a lot of my students and these campuses, they don't even have the capacity to hold the truth of Black women's actual lived experiences. So I usually have to take it back a step and teach like portions of the book, but I can't teach the entire book because they're not there yet.
I think about that too, because even now, they're like, Tony's still hard. Tony is still hard. Like, I love her as an ancestor, but I'm like, sometimes I just want to like commune with her and be like, girl, what was the what? But then I also know a lot of Midwestern baddies. That's why I call them Midwestern baddies. I always say, they are kind, but they are not nice.
Yes.
So it's very much a
Yes, and Toni Morrison was an Aquarius. People forget, like a lot of our faves are Aquariuses. Audre Lorde, Aquarius. Nina Simone, Aquarius. Angela Davis, Aquarius. Aquariuses are not known for being nice, right? Like they love you down. They'll be loyal, but they will also tell you about themselves. And I think about the fact that, Bell Hooks, a Libra, both of my grandmothers, Libras. I take this stuff so seriously. Like I see so much of the women in my life, my mother's an Aquarius, reflected in these women as well because they're just so human, right? Like part of what I wanted to do with this book as well was to say, we have to allow Black women to be human beings and not objects for our consumption, right? That's so much of my work is around that.
So let's talk about that consumption because you have a chapter called Fannie Lou Hamer taught me to be unrespectable. I need you to talk about respectability politics because I feel like that conversation is everywhere right now, especially at this time when we're on the 250th year of America's empower destiny. We'll see most empires crash and burn after 250 years. And we're all trying to figure out how to navigate and find our identity. I think as Americans, we probably haven't had our identity really clear since honestly the Civil War, if we're being completely honest,
Mhm.
in my opinion. Um, what does Fannie Lou Hamer actually teach us about the cost of respectability and who pays that price?
Mm, I love that. Um, respectability is one of the hardest concepts for me to teach because I think people want me to um, jettison respectability wholesale as if, like I'm going to say it's awful in all respects and don't worry about being respectable. But I actually don't feel that way. One thing I've had to teach my students, and one thing I try to also convey in the book is that respectability is about survival, right? And you can only be unrespectable truly when you know that you are safe enough to do so, right?
Mm,
And there are people who, for their own safety, they pass because that's one way that they're able to navigate anti-blackness and white supremacy. They have, this culture of dissemblance, which is what um, we refer to it as black feminists, and that is what protects so many black women from the violence and the ire of outside community members. Respectability is something where Fannie Lou Hamer, uh, she never had a choice, right?
mm,
She grew up poor and destitute in Mississippi in a time where, folks were trying to make money just simply just doing sharecropping and having their dollars and cents stolen by previous plantation owners, so respectability didn't actually do anything for her. And not only did it not do anything for her, she didn't have access to it. And so one of the things that she would often say is like, I'm poor. I grew up with no shoes on my feet. And she said, and no matter what happens with me, there will still be poor black Mississippians walking around with no shoes on their feet. What are we going to do about this? And I always kind of respected Fanny's approach to the work because for her, it wasn't about status and clout and class and her achieving. It was nobody should have to live like this, right? And that is an inherently unrespectable place of being, right? Where I see myself reflected in the most vulnerable. I see myself reflected in those people who are seen as disposable, and I am elevating them. And that's where I think I really learned the lesson around being unrespectable, right? Is that you could, for example, myself, I have a whole PhD, but the work I do does not censor people who are in these elite spaces intentionally, right? The work I do is inherently unrespectable because these institutions don't respect people who look like me and come from where I come from, right? So rather than contend with that and feel challenged by it, I accept it. And I love this about me, right? I love that I'm not legible to these institutions, that they're like, you have a PhD and you went to these elite universities. Why are you out here in the streets taking? Because I actually am a black person first, right? Like black vulnerable people, right? Most marginalized people, that's who comes first for me. And I think that's something that I could not have learned had I not really dug into Fannie Lou Hamer's life and her choices.
mm. You said something very interesting in response about the respectability of access to respectability. Go a little deeper in that. Because I know where you go, and I agree with you.
Yes.
But for those who are listening, who don't really understand the access to respectability, can you expound on that?
Absolutely. So, in political science, respectability politics is credited to Hazel Carby. She wrote a book called Reconstructing Womanhood that gave us this concept of respectability politics. And what she argues there is that there are ways that Black Americans can leverage their proximity to certain ways of being, social norms around professionalism, or the behaviors of whiteness. This whole thing when they say you're so articulate, and you dress so well, you look so respectable, right? And she argues that those types of behaviors and that assimilation with social norms is a mode of survival, but it is inherently anti-black, right? It's rooted in anti-blackness, that, you know, if your hair is not looking at like something that is legible to those people, then it's unkempt, it's dirty, right? It's unrespectable. Or, you know, if you come from, this comes from the Daniel Patrick Moynihan report of 1965, if you come from a single parent household where you were raised by matriarchs, that you are somehow part of this broken part of society and you are not as good as everyone else. So when I say the accessibility to respectability politics, what I'm suggesting is that there are some folks like Fannie Lou Hamer, who she said her body doesn't even let her, you know, participate in whatever this respectability politics is, right? She was a larger, dark-skinned black woman. She doesn't have the same features as these kind of Eurocentric, you know, normative ideas of what you should look like, right? And she was very clear on that. And not only was she clear on that, she embraced it, right? She said, I actually don't care what y'all think about how I look or where I come from. It actually doesn't matter what you think. I still have a right to survival. I have a right to live. And that's what I mean about access, is that there are some of our bodies that simply don't conform. I am a 6'4" tall black woman who is misgendered every day. I get called sir all the time, right? My body does not conform to the ideals of gender, right? My body transgresses inherently. And so seeing Fannie Lou Hamer's lessons and her way of being helped me to give myself permission to move in this unrespectable body.
I really love that. I love Fannie Lou. She's definitely top of the list to me because I talked about this like in Texas. My dad's side,
Mm.
they don't think they are, but they are.
Mhm.
And the things that they believe in inherently, and it's so funny because we just talked about the Texas rodeo and like the dress code, and I'm just like, y'all, like, they're like, well, they shouldn't be wearing these clothes, there's kids around. I'm like, y'all are belligerent, drunk, falling all over. I was just at rodeo last year. There are people who are guzzling tequila, guzzling beers, and they are falling all this way, that way, all up on the floor. The police are coming in, got to pick y'all up because y'all drunk. What do you think that does to a kid versus
Exactly.
this person's butt?
Exactly.
Not the same. So sorry, but they were like, it's a family event. Y'all
No,
drinking
it
at
is
it?
the same. It is the same. It is the same. And that's the thing that's also important too, is that there are so many black people
Yeah.
who enforce respectability politics on other black people, right? And this, unfortunately, it is often a generational thing, right? You young girls got your legs out, and I will never forget when I was in my 20s, and I have a niece, and she was a little girl at the time. She had to be, you know, between 11 and 13. And she was wearing some shorts. She was at home in her house where she lived. She had on some shorts. And one of the elder women in my community, you know, grabbed her by her waist and started pinching on her thighs and was like, these shorts are too short. I think these shorts are just too short. And she's like, these men are gonna see you out here, blah, 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 blah. And I looked at her and I said, get your hands off of my niece. She don't, you sitting here talking about these men. She's in her house with her family. Everyone here is related to her. The only person assaulting her is you. You're violating her body right now. You didn't. I said, did you ask her permission to touch her body that close to her private areas? I'm like, do you see yourself? And it was interesting because at the time, everyone in the room was kind of like, because they were so used to her doing that, right? They were so used to her touching and talking to these little girls this way. And I'm like, that type of politic is what has our children growing up and thinking that their bodies are not okay, that they can't move comfortably and freely because they have to always be afraid of this boogeyman, when in actuality, sometimes the boogeyman is their own auntie or their own grandma or their own church lady, you know? And we have to work on this as a community.
Yeah, I totally agree. The fear and the processing of that fear leads to the captivity of the body because we are trying to police for unforeseen circumstances that could or could not happen. When
Mhm.
really we should just be checking the men because why are you looking at 13-year-olds?
Right. Come on.
Because, yeah, I just read If I Rule the World by Amy Du Bois.
Mm.
Um, And I was thinking about, it's about a girl in the 90s. She's like in the late 90s, early aughts. And I'm thinking about that time. And I'm like, and then watching the, America's Next Top Model documentary. I'm like, wow. It's like really a sign of the time. And the older that I get, the more I see the things that are the signs of the times. And so when I was reading your book, I was just like thinking, I'm like, wow, like even though we have progressed so much, the sign of the times is still the sign of the times, and we have to keep pushing, and that's why we have these influential figures to keep us pushing and
That's right.
have them today to keep us pushing because we all want to stay stagnant if we
That's
don't.
right. That's right.
And I think about that too, about Ida B. Wells, who is another one of my girls, because she can't stand men and have a man too. Cause like I also am an active man hater who unfortunately is attracted to men. So here I am, and I love my man, but active man hater here.
Yeah.
He is a radical truth teller. We are living right now in a moment where truth feels like it's not, we can play around with it. It's under siege. We got book bans. We got history being rewritten in real time. If everybody's watching this right now, keep buying physical copies of things because you never know what's going to happen. I'm just need to be that kind of person. We have to. What does Ida B. Wells like teach us in particular about how to move through that,
Mm.
and what would she do right now?
Mm. Child, Ida would have a shotgun right now. She would be mowing niggas down. It's really funny. I'm actually gonna bring together the question with us talking about my man, my man, my man. Because I'm a lesbian and I have been married to a man for 20 years. Um, my spouse is the most incredible person I know. He's my best friend. We have 3 children together. He's an incredible father. He is just a great person. And part of the truth telling that I write about in that chapter on Ida B. Wells, I actually write about myself and about how hard it was for me to tell the truth about myself to myself because of all the lessons I was taught about my body and what I was supposed to belong to someone. It was supposed to be a heterosexual man and we get married and we have 2.5 kids and we do blah, blah. And I didn't want to do that.
The dog and all that.
Right. When I met him, I thought I was very much a gay person. And it took me really grappling with the ways that so many Black women have told the truth even at their own peril, right? Ida B. Wells is a primary example of this. She ends up writing, at this newspaper, and they white men try to come and kill her, right? A white mob comes into the news office and burns the whole thing down, right? She has to flee her own town, right? And she did it anyway. She was writing under a pseudonym, and she's like, "This is something I have to do." She wrote this pamphlet on lynching, the one that we all read now, right? And she writes Southern Horrors and The Red Record, and she does that even as people are trying to murder her for just telling the truth. And so I wrote this chapter to say, it's so interesting to me that I struggled with telling the truth when Ida was willing to do it, and almost got killed for it. I'm like, it made me feel more courageous knowing that there were Black women who came before me who were willing to risk their lives for the truth, right? And so I think about this relationship, this long-term spouse that I've had, and the fact that I'm a polyamorous person and I'm a queer person, and all these truths about me that I suppressed for so long so I could perform, this identity and solidarity with the people, the Black heteronormative Christian folks that raised me. But in the time, at the same time, it was a self-betrayal, right? And I'm like, I just don't believe Ida would do that. I just don't think that she would engage in this kind of self-betrayal that so many of us actively participate in the name of solidarity or in the name of being seen and accepted and affirmed. And so that chapter is really thinking about what would it look like if we all had the same courage as Ida, right? If we decided to tell the truth in all walks of life, what would that look like?
Ooh, that is something I think about often. Because as we know, the women in our lives and in the movement and who have been, Black Americans in this experiment, it's something that it's scary to do because it pushes you in places that are fearful because we've been so conditioned just to survive.
Mm-hmm.
That what does it look like when you live your life for you,
Mm-hmm.
but for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about Fanny, I think about Harriet, I think about Shirley, I think about all these women, and I'm like, wow, we never admire you when you're here.
That's
We
right.
give you flowers in real life, in real time, but when you pass, we give them everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody's listening right now, like just really think about how do you give someone flowers now, and don't wait till they leave.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of courage to tell the
Mm-hmm.
truth and to stand in that and to really push a system, because it is hard. It is really
Yeah.
hard. And I want to talk about how you said you wrote this book for a new generation of movement organizers and co-strugglers. If
Mm.
someone finishes this book and wants to do something, not just feel something, especially right now, where do you point them?
Mm. I love these questions.
I
You know,
try.
I think the book is very much structured like my course in that the early chapters are just kind of learning the theory, understanding what freedom is. Why does it matter? Like, why does it matter how we see ourselves situated with regards to other people in the community? And then the last few chapters are really like the praxis, right? That's where we talk about Audre Lorde and self-care and Angela Y. Davis and this idea of anti-racism and abolition. We talk about bell hooks and how we can move in ways that are deeply loving with ourselves and with others. And the last chapter is me reflecting on my own lessons, right? On patience. And so if I were to direct someone somewhere in this book and then also in the broader world, I think this book is someone asked me recently, what do you want me to get out of this? So they were a fiction reader and they were like, I don't really read nonfiction, but I kind of want to read this. So what am I supposed to understand here? And I told her, I said, I want people to understand that we all have power in our orbit and in our network to make massive change, right? Like when I talk about a new generation of co-strugglers and freedom fighters and the idea of reimagining a freer world, my argument is that if you look at each of these women and what they were willing to do, how they were willing to show up, right? You can also see ways that you yourself can do something like that in your own community, right? You can talk about the truth, right? At church or with that auntie or, with those people in your community who say you're not allowed to exist this way. You can challenge that. And now you can do it knowing full well that you come from a lineage of Black women who have done that work. The whole point of the book is to send folks on their way so that they will keep doing this work. This will not be the end point of their journey, but the starting point. That's why I have a ridiculously long bibliography and I have citations throughout the book, right? The whole point, and a syllabus in the paperback, right? The whole point is to say, like, we each matter, right? We each, our orientation toward this work matters. And these women don't exist in vacuums, right? A lot of them knew each other, they collaborated, they built institutions together. Kitchen Table Press was started from a conversation between Audre Lorde and Barbara Smith, who is one of the members of the Combahee River Collective, right? June Jordan, Audre Lorde had a long-term friendship. These people were collaborators. They were co-conspirators. And that's what people should be looking to become, right? They should be looking to learn these lessons and then go do and be otherwise. That's what you should always want to do. What am I doing now? And how can I show up differently so that I challenge the status quo? And this book was intended to give those lessons.
If you were to give your book, if you were to put your book with another book that is having a conversation with each other, what book would you say?
Ooh, My
I know
God.
two questions. I just thought of that.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, that's a surprise question.
Surprise,
You know,
surprise.
I read a lot of books. I read about 70 books a year. So, I think there's a couple. So I'll start with Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider. Sister Outsider is a compilation of essays from Audre Lorde that detail mostly her speeches and talks that she gave as she was straddling the kind of poet world, writing world, and academia. Those essays are so critically important. The essays include her essay on the master's tools, her essay on how to raise a Black son in a world that rewards patriarchy, the uses of the erotic, right? All of those essays are in this anthology. And they're also critical because she is writing in the 70s at a time where we were not allowed to speak about ourselves in honest ways, right? And so I take cues from her. I take lessons directly from her. I would also say Communion by Bell Hooks, which is an entire book about how we love other Black women. And that book blew me away. Everyone always talks about All About Love, but I think people forget that that was a series of 3 books, which included Communion, Salvation, and All About Love. And they are all distinct and they are all so important. But Communion is saying, we have to learn how to love each other in community. And we also have to learn how to treat ourselves like members of that community. We have to love ourselves. Okay, and then the third one is Lindsay Stewart's Conjuring of America. Um, I love
I'm
this book.
reading that.
I love this book. I love this book. And I love
I'm
this.
going to get bigger.
Yes. This book to me is so critical in this moment because it also is an effort to rescue our history from intentional erasure. It's an effort to tell true stories about Black women and specifically Negro mammies, right? Who are often minimized to very problematic tropes and stereotypes. And she shows like actually they were better than some of these surgeons and doctors, and they were making all types of, remedies and balms and salves that ended up becoming the basis for things like Vicks Vapor Rub and things we take for granted come from Black women. And so I think if I had to choose anything, it would be those 3 books because they work to me in tandem to do the same thing, which is tell the truth about Black women, even when it's hard, and to rescue our history from the unknowing, the intentional misremembering, and the violence of the archive.
And when I was reading this, I just finished reading Seven Daughters of Decree. And I was like, oh, this is, I'm like, all my books are just having conversations with each other at this point. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. I was like reading, I'm getting ready for the episodes, we get ready for everything. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, if I were to capture this season, it's definitely like all the episodes that I've been talking about is love and conversations and all those things that we're having right now, and I really, really love it. So what books books are you reading or rereading right now that feel essential to you?
Mm. Oh my gosh. Well, I just finished Bloom How You Must by Tara Pringle Jefferson. Another book that I really, really like that I just finished is called Stop Waiting for Perfect by L'Oreal Thompson Payton. She has a bookstore called Zora's Place in Chicago. It's actually a little bit north of Chicago. It's in the suburbs, but I love this book because it is for the high performing Black girls. Yeah, it's telling us, it's okay to not be perfect, which I was reading it and I felt called in. I felt bad. I was like, "Ooh, I need these lessons." She has little questions. Yeah, but we're socialized to be perfect, right? Because we are told if you're not 10 times better, then you're not good enough. And it's true. It plays out in society. It plays out all the time. So, that book has been sitting in my spirit. I already mentioned Conjuring America. You'll see I have all my books right off the camera. So I love this book.
That cover is amazing too.
I may reread it. I may reread it again. And then another book that I really love that I just finished, and this is the last one I'm gonna share. Um, How to Be Unmothered by Camille U. Adams. This I'm not a poet. I don't think I'm a poet. I've tried to be a poet. But this book is written, it's written like prose,
Mhm.
but it reads in a rhythm. There's a pulse and a rhythm throughout the entire book, that feels like a song.
Ooh.
And it's a Trinidadian memoir, and it takes you straight into Trinidad and Tobago as if you are sitting there on the streets. I don't know how she did it. Just, I've asked
Divine.
her, yeah, I've asked her to explain it. She tried. I still don't know. This book is incredible, and I just think more people need to read it.
Okay, don't worry about to write that on the list, and don't worry, that will be in the notes, so y'all can get
Mhm.
it, okay? So, I know you are wrapping up your paperback tour, so I know authors kind of need it, so I'm gonna ask, what's next? Is there anything
Oh,
that,
oh, I love this question because I'm a Virgo, so I got like 75 projects.
we're going through?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I have another book coming out. This is a very academic book. It's called Policing Blackness. It will be coming out at Cornell University Press next year. This book is an in-depth analysis of the ways that young Black Americans navigate police threat in the United States and what the stakes are. I interviewed 100 young Black Americans and asked them, about their experiences. And this book details all of it. It's heavy. It's sad at times, but I think it's part of my work again, in the Wellesian tradition to tell the truth. So,
Yeah.
um, and then I have a memoir that I recently finished. It's called Maternal, which is probably why this book is hitting me so hard. It's about, my mother, and it's about the mother wound. It's about the ways that so many Black girls, especially oldest girls and only girls, are raised to essentially be the mule of the world,
Mhm.
and how our mothers are sometimes as hooks, rights, um, in the will to change. Sometimes our mothers are also the tools of patriarchy. So,
I love that book.
yeah,
That's an underrated hit. The Will to Change is an underrated hit. And be real cool.
yeah,
Was.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Actually, We Were Cool is actually in my book. I cite that in my book. So, yeah, I am working on those two projects. They should both be out in 2027. So I'm taking, after this book tour ends, I am taking 6 months, and I
Wow.
am resting,
Wow.
and then I will be back out there at the beginning of next year.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am so proud of you. If
Thank
no
you.
one to you today, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And where can the folks find you if they look?
Child, unfortunately, I'm everywhere. I don't mean to be, but I'm everywhere. So, Jen M. Jackson, PhD on every platform. People be like, you always put PhD. Oh,
Oh,
hi.
sorry. Oh, it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Look, I'm gonna get off.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna hang up. Sorry.
Horrible.
That's hilarious. Oh my
Hi.
god.
I was gonna say, yeah, Jenna Jackson, PhD everywhere, and no, people have said to me, "Why do you have PhD in your handle?" And they think it's because I just am that obsessed with having a PhD, and the answer is no,
You
that's
should
not
talk
why.
about the next one. You
Yeah,
should just
that's, well, I mean, yeah, but also it's because I have a very common name. So there are 700,000 Jen Jacksons in the world,
well,
but PhD helped me to have the same handle on everything. So that's how I help people remember it. Jen Jackson, I'm the one with the PhD at the end. That's it.
I love that. And you should be happy you got a PhD because
Thank
as
you.
someone who has seen y'all go through it and sat there while my fiance got his PhD at Morgan State in public health. I'm sitting over
Come
here
on,
like,
Morgan State.
yes, yes.
I
We actually
love
met
Morgan State.
in College Park, so that's how we met. And he's like a public health dude, okay?
I love this.
That's his life.
Wait, are you in the DMV?
I'm in Baltimore right now.
We're neighbors. I live in
We
Gaithersburg.
are neighbors. You know, I hate coming to DC, but I will hit you up. But you can always come to me.
I'm in Baltimore.
You
At
can
least
pick me
once
at
a
Mama
week.
Coco's.
The-
'Cause that's
I'm
like-
going to Mama Coco's. I'm going to Mama Coco's in a few days. I love Baltimore.
Oh my gosh. Well, you'll probably see Mama Coco herself.
I
She
do.
always-
Every time I see her, she's adorable.
While she in there, being the cutest thing that she ever
She's
wants.
so sweet. She's so sweet.
So sweet. But yeah, if you're there, I'll probably be. When you going?
Friday. I'm going on Friday.
I might be around. I might have hot pits, but I'll be around. So I'm getting mirror dry, y'all. Y'all all up in our business, but I'm getting mirror dry so I can stop sweating so bad underneath my underarms because I'm tired of sweating this bad, and I do not want to do Botox.
I want that. I want that. Report back.
I'll tell you how it is.
Oh yeah. Report back.
I will. So with that, y'all, with our very invasive time and a guest sneak peek, that is the end of our episode. And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Jackson, for taking the time and space to be in community with me, deal with my technical difficulties because Mercury just got out her microphone.
It happens.
We're here, but thank you for being in community with me. And with that, y'all, that is another episode of Dot Dot Dot. We'll make a book. And keep reading, but keep healing, because that's what we do. All right, peace.